Okay, so I know that all of you in this room had worked in a previous election, so some of these things I'm really going to skim by to save some time. So I want you to look on page 46 in the left-hand corner. Those are all the items that you need to have at your station so that you can check in voters appropriately. You're going to have clipboards and pens, okay? So you're going to put their application for ballot on those clipboard and pens, especially when you have a big long line of voters, right? Most of your voters come in the early morning hours before work or school, and same thing at the close of the polls, right? After work or school, they come in later at night. But during the rest of the day, people just kind of come in and out, especially at a primary election. You're also going to have your electronic poll book, because once the person actually writes their information on the application, you use that application to look up their information. Right below that, it shows voter cards. So any voter that wants to vote on the touchscreen, they have to use this voter card, and you have to activate it so that it will pull up their right party and the right candidates within that party. Then you're going to have a large ballot viewer. So in the event that people forget their reading glasses, or you don't want to make them walk back to their car to get them or home, you can use this magnifier, right? They can magnify the print on their application for ballot or their ballot itself. And then next, you're going to have a signature guide. So a signature guide, I'm just showing it to you because a lot of people don't really know what they are. A signature guide is used when you need a signature somewhere, but a person who is visually impaired or blind doesn't know where their signature is needed. So you can put the signature guide on the area in which their signature is needed, and they know to stay within those parameters, okay? So that's what a signature guide is. Then next, it talks about headphone covers. So for hygiene purposes, you're going to have headphone covers that you can switch out on the headphone set. However, I will tell you that most people that use that audio capability in their lives, they bring their own headphones, right? When they go to an ATM, they have their own headphones. When they use any of that kind of equipment, they usually use their own because that's what they do on a daily basis. Then you're going to have the Form 1, which is the Consolidated Voter's Affidavit. So there are very specific circumstances in which a voter would have to use an affidavit and sign it before they vote. And we'll go over those situations. But you also see right below that Form 1 are any of the translated Form 1s. So again, those translations, if they're in your form, in your envelope number 3, they need to be at your table, okay, visible. Then you have a Form 1A, which is a notice to any people who are providing assistance to a voter. So anytime a person walks to a voting booth to help somebody, number 1, an affidavit must be filled out, but number 2, they have to read this notice. So it's also translated in other languages, but it's only a paragraph and a half. The voter needs to read, or I'm sorry, the person who's assisting needs to read that, and it tells them how to provide assistance without influencing the voter, right? Don't vote the way I want. They're voting the way the voter's telling them to vote. And then you have a Form number 11. That's a precinct notification slip. So anytime a person walks into the wrong precinct, you have to always try to direct them to their correct precinct and ward. And you can do that by writing down the name of the location they should be voting at along with the address. So that's what we call a precinct notification slip. And then next, you are going to have your Form number 14. Those are all of your applications for ballot. Right below that, you're going to see a Form number 15. That's a correction report. So anytime a person has wrong information, meaning you can look on their application and see on the electronic poll book that we spelled their name wrong. If that's the case, you can write that on the correction report. You also may have personal information about a person who passed away in your precinct, or maybe a family that moved out, right? And you know that they were on the registration records or rolls. You can write that on the correction report. If we can find the evidence to substantiate that claim, we will try to correct it, and if not, it may have to stay on there. So it all depends on the information you're giving us. Then the next item is a 47E envelope. Anytime a person has to fill out an affidavit, it has to be placed in this 47E envelope. But you also have other items in there, right? Any poll watcher credentials that are completed, and also your oath of office. So it's kind of like a legal carrier envelope. Next thing you're going to have is a Form 118. That's an election judge sign-up sheet. So you may have people that come in and say, wow, it looks like you're having a great time. How can I be a poll worker? You can say, okay, well, why don't you print your name and email or address, and the election authority will send you information on how to become an election judge in the November general election. And then the last thing you're going to have is a Form 276P, which are provisional affidavits. So you know that some people sometimes have to vote a provisional ballot, and what that means is that you're allowing a person to vote on election day, but their ballot is not being counted. It's being stored within that affidavit envelope, and it's being returned to the election authority, because we have to analyze that circumstance or that situation, okay? So now that you have all your items in front of you, you can start looking up voters. But when a voter walks in, you have to hand them an application, and that's on page 47. So if you look in the right-hand corner, you're going to see an application for ballot, and let's look at it, and let's see what the voter must fill out. The voter must print their name, their address, and the year that they were born. Right below that, they're going to check off the party ballot that they want to receive at the March primary. And right below that, we need their signature in that long white box. Once you retrieve that information, you are then going to go to the poll book, and one of you two election judges who are sitting at station number 1, you are going to put in the first 2 letters of their last name and only 1 letter of their first name into the electronic poll book. You're then going to get various names that will appear on the screen, and you will tap the name that is their name. And then once you do that, you are going to look where you see that big black circle, and you are going to have to put in that specific information. You're going to have to put in the precinct and ward number, their ballot style, and their VRN, which stands for voter registration number. There is a space right there to write an application number, but that's not your job at station number 1. That is the duty of the election judge who's sitting at station number 2. It's their job to write the application number, but to also look at that. They look at this, and that's how they know how to prepare the ballot. They find the paper ballot and the ballot style that pertains to that voter that they're asking for, okay? I want you to look on the bottom right-hand side where it says judge initial here. Even though there's 2 election judges sitting at station number 1, only one of you put your initials there. That means both of you checked in that voter, and you agree that that person should be voting in your precinct. Now, if the voter ever falls under one of these circumstances, I want you to look to the left of that where your initials go. If the person had to vote by an affidavit, please check that box. If the person needed assistance while they were voting, please check that box. And also, if a person was challenged, I don't care if you uphold the challenge or you deny it. Please make sure that if there was a challenge made on a voter, check off that box. And then right below that, if a person spoiled a ballot and had to get another one, that box is going to had to be checked off, but it happens at station number 2 at that point, okay? And then the last one is if a person votes a provisional ballot. So those are the boxes that you have to check if the voter falls under those circumstances. I want you guys to look at page 48 and 49. Those are all the things that I've covered, talking about how to look them up. And on page 49, it shows you the correction report. That brings us over to page 50 and 51. Station number 1 is telling you understanding who may vote in your precinct. So it's saying right there, the very first category, that a 17-year-old may register and vote at this election because it's a primary, so long as that they'll be 18 by the November general election date, okay? And the poll book is already configured to where it knows what the legal dates are. So it won't even allow you to enter if the person is not of legal age to vote. I want you to look right below that. It says voters who are already registered in the precinct. Those will be the majority, right? Because most people are registered and they come to their home precinct to cast a ballot on election day. I want you to look on the middle column on page 50. It talks about voters who must use a consolidated voter's affidavit. So remember I told you there's very limited circumstances as to why a person might have to fill out a sworn statement before they're allowed to vote. So let's look at what those circumstances are. I want you to look on page 51, and that is the voters, Form 1, Consolidated Voters Affidavit. It is a double-sided form though, isn't it? Right? So if you look on your next page, on page 52, it'll show you the back side of the affidavit form. Okay, so let's go back to the first page. So on the affidavit form itself, you are always going to put the precinct and ward number on the top right-hand column, and then you are going to print the voter's name, or they can, it doesn't matter, and then their address, their current address will be printed on the second line. You will check off the appropriate box as to why they're having to fill out an affidavit, and then the election judge who's filling out the paperwork will sign on the bottom left-hand side, and the voter will sign and date the right-hand side. There you go. Now here's the very first box of why a person would have to fill this affidavit out first. It says change of address less than 30 days within the election. So what happens is the Illinois election law says that you must live in a precinct for at least 30 days in order to vote within that precinct and those candidates of that precinct. So that means, what if you move within that time frame? Where should you go vote? At your old precinct, right? And so that would happen. If the voter comes in and this is their old precinct, they will fill out this affidavit form, you and them will fill this out, and you'll check off that box. Now it says supporting affidavit on the back, box number A needs to be filled out. That means a registered voter of that precinct has to affirm for this voter. And that's simple enough. But what if they don't have anybody that's willing to swear for them, right? Because any voter or person who signs the back of this affidavit, this is a supporting affidavit. That means this person signing supports this voter's claim. That's what it means. So if the person doesn't have somebody willing to sign or affirm for them, they can go back to the front of the form, and that person has to show 2 pieces of ID, but it says that one of them has to be postmarked within the last 30 days of the election, right? So they might show you a gas bill that they just got like 2 or 3 days ago, and it's postmarked within that time frame. So that's that. The next category, box number 2, is vote by mail ballot scenarios. So because voting by mail is becoming so very popular, the bigger a program, the more little hiccups or headaches you're going to have, right? Or things, that go along with that program. So here's what it says. The very first box says, I have submitted my vote by mail ballot or a portion of it, and now I want to vote in person. So please understand, ladies and gentlemen, that you can never accept a ballot at your precinct, right, that it was supposed to be mailed back in. So you don't have a voter come run in and say, oh, good, you're here. Here's my ballot, and then run out the door. You can't handle a live ballot, even if it's in the mail envelope. What happens is they can turn it in, and you spoil it, and you put it in your 47E envelope, but then they must vote in person, right? Tit for tat. They have to turn it in and say, I surrender this, but now I want to vote in person. So that's how you do that. The next box says, I applied for, but I never received my vote by mail ballot. That's easy enough. The person is signing and swearing and affirming to the fact that they asked for one, but they never got it. So maybe it got lost in the mail. The third one is, I received a notice that the board rejected my vote by mail ballot. If that happens, they are notified, and they are told that they can only vote in person. The very next one is, I returned my vote by mail ballot, but the board did not receive it. So those are all claims and people swearing to that fact, and then you can let them vote in person. But please make sure that they fill out the affidavit first. Now, don't freak out and think, how am I going to memorize all this? You're not going to. The poll book is going to tell you these things. The poll book, number 1, is going to alert you to the fact that the person applied for a vote by mail ballot. And all these different scenarios, they're going to appear for you right on the screen. Okay, so no problems, exactly. Let's go to box number 3 or 4. Any person that needs assistance on election day, this affidavit must be filled out. So let's talk about assistance. These are the 2 reasons, box 3 and 4, of why a person would be getting assistance on election day. The very first box, number 3, says they cannot read, write, or speak English. That is a very wonderful and great idea on why a person should be assisted, right? They're having trouble reading the form or what have you, or reading the ballot. The next reason is a physical disability. Perhaps the person suffers from Parkinson's disease, right? And they have tremors in their hand, so maybe they can't mark the ballot or the touch screen. That's a reason. Maybe they forgot their reading glasses or they had eye surgery. It's not our business as to why, but they do need to check off either they cannot read or write or the physical disability. Under physical disability, it does show that you have to just quickly explain what the physical disability is. So that's good, right? But on the back of the form, on the back side, so turn to page 52, anybody that's assisting has to fill out box B on the back of the form, which is the supporting affidavit. So if the person brought a friend or family member, it's their choice of who they want to assist them. The only people it can't be is their employer or their union representative. Other than that, they can bring in any friend or relative that they choose. Now, what if they don't have somebody that was willing or could take the time off of the day to come help them? Who would help them? Two of the judges, exactly. So that's the correct answer. It's going to be one Democratic and one Republican election judge. And if that's the case, if you are selected on election day or you have to assist somebody, you would be signing on the right-hand side. But if you look at box C, it's a nice check and balance. If you are not assisting a voter, then one of the judges at the table has to sign and affirm for what's going on, okay? So it's a nice check and balance of giving legal assistance. Again, we don't care that people need assistance, we care that the affidavit is filled out. And it doesn't matter how they're affiliated, it still must be completed. And then always remember to give them that form on telling that voter or that person how to legally provide the assistance to that voter. The very last reason is a federal office only ballot. So it says this voter must only vote on the touchscreen. So here is why, number one, this is an outdated, it's not outdated, it's a law that happened and was passed many years ago. So back in 1993, we had NVRA that was passed. It was the National Voter Registration Act. So within that act, it said that if a person moved outside of 30 days of the election, they had plenty of time to register, but for whatever reason, they did not. It at least allowed them, because they failed to register in their current precinct, it gave them the ability to go to their former precinct and vote for just the federal offices. Why? Because those other offices didn't affect them. They no longer lived within those precinct boundaries. So we let them at least vote for the federal offices. And yes, they had to do it on the touchscreen, because when they put their card into the touchscreen, the screen only pulls up the federal offices that are up for election. You can't give them a paper ballot and say, okay, so you're just going to vote for these 2 offices or 3 and then stop right there. You can't, like swear, and you can't know that they're going to stop right there because you can't go into a voting booth with another voter, okay? So here's why it's a little bit outdated, because now we have same-day registration where a person can go to their current place of residency and they can register and vote within that precinct. But let's say that the person is limited on time, right? They come into your precinct at 6:30 and you look in the poll book and it shows they're inactive. And by talking to them, they're like, yeah, we don't live here anymore. You say, well, we need to get you to your new precinct. And they say, no, I don't have time, or I'm not going anywhere. Then they can only vote for the federal offices, okay? And then you would activate the card as such, and then when they put the card into the touchscreen, it'll only pull up those offices, okay? So that's the affidavit, the form number 1. So I just wanted you to know, not every single voter has to fill out an affidavit, just if they fall under those circumstances. So let's proceed, let's go forward, and let's look at page, we'll look at page 53, talks about challenging a person's right to vote. Anybody can challenge a voter. I can, you can, and so can another voter. But it's up to the election panel of election judges that are at the precinct to either uphold the challenge or deny it. You have to listen to the evidence being brought to you by the challenger, and you have to listen to the evidence of the voter that's being challenged, and then you vote on it. And if you decide that the person should be challenged, they can only vote a provisional ballot. If you decide that the challenge is, it's not worthy, you're just going to let them vote, they just vote. They don't have to do anything, they don't have to show anything or fill out anything. So that's how a challenge works. I want you to look on page 54 and 55 and 56 and 57. So stay at page 56, okay? Or keep your books open to page 56 and 57. If a person must vote a provisional ballot, you are going to find their provisional materials in what we call a 3P envelope, and that stands for provisional. Anything provisional related will be of this fuchsia hot pink color. And it draws your attention because it has to draw your attention, because the ballot should not be counted in your precinct on election day. So that's very critical. So remember, at station number 1, you have affidavit forms that have to be there in the event that a person does have to cast a provisional ballot. When the person is finished voting a provisional ballot, it is stored in this particular envelope. And this envelope stays open and at your table at station number 2 up until the voting hours are gone. Any person that votes provisional must vote on the touch screen. For many elections, we had paper provisional ballots, and we no longer have those. You have to activate the card as such so that we know it's a provisional voter. When it gets printed out here on the printer, it says provisional at the top of it. And then the provisional voter will put their ballot into this provisional privacy screen. Do you see how this is color-coded so that it doesn't ever get put into the ballot scanner? So if you're the election judge that's working at the ballot scanner, this color lets you know that that ballot should not be going through that scanner. That ballot needs to be brought back to the voter check-in table where it will be initialed, and then the voter themselves will fold up their ballot and they'll stuff it in here. That's what a provisional ballot is, okay? And there's very specific circumstances as to why you would let somebody vote on election day, but yet their vote's not being counted. So if you look on page 56, it shows you all the things I just showed you up here. But on the right-hand side, it's reminding you that that voter must vote on the touch screen. So if you look on page 57, on the right-hand side, you're going to see the affidavit form. So let's go over the different circumstances as to why a person would vote a provisional. Number 1, the election judge. One of the 2 election judges who is sitting at station number 1, they are the ones that print at the top of the form. They have to provide the date of the election, the precinct and ward, and the ballot style. They then have to put in a provisional ID number that will be given to you by the poll book. So once you data enter all the information into the poll book, it will provide a provisional ID number, and that ID number must be written on here. Because this is a primary election, you have to give us their political party affiliation, what ballot they want to vote, and then you have to check off the reason. And there are several reasons. If you have any evidence or any information from you or the voter that will substantiate or even give us proof as to why we shouldn't count that ballot, you have to write it on those lines. So it says, tell the board any other details about why this person is eligible or ineligible to vote at this election. You will then sign your name and then print your name. You will then turn this over to the voter and say, please print all of the boxes here, all the information asked of you, and then sign it and date it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't write the date of the election, we can't look at this affidavit at all. If you don't check off the reason, we cannot look at this scenario. Why? Because it's not a sworn statement. So please make sure that you take the time to read and fill in all the blanks, okay? Here's the first reason why a person would be voting a provisional ballot. The voter wasn't found in the electronic poll book and didn't want to register in the correct precinct. So it's somebody coming into your precinct, you can't find them as a registered voter. They may not live in the precinct, but they're demanding to vote there. Instead of arguing with them, you just allow them to vote a provisional ballot. The second reason is the voter received a vote by mail ballot and the voter says it hasn't been returned to the board yet. So here's a vote by mail scenario where the voter knows that they asked for a ballot and it's just sitting at their house. They're not telling you where it is. They didn't put it back in the mail. They're not saying that they didn't get it. They're not accounting for it, right? Oh, it's on my counter. What's the big deal? Well, it is a big deal because now they can only vote a provisional ballot. The next reason is the voter mailed in a voter registration form and had to show ID before voting, but they couldn't come up with that ID, so therefore we only allow them to vote a provisional ballot. So there are very limited circumstances as to why a person would have to show ID on election day. You cannot demand ID from every voter because that's in violation of the election code. We in Illinois are a signature comparison state. We look at the signature that they give us on election day and we compare it to the one that is in our electronic poll book, the one that they provided when they registered to vote, okay? That's what we compare. So why would a person have to show ID on election day? Because when you register to vote, you have to give your full driver's license or state ID number or the last 4 digits of your social. And if you didn't do that on the form, and we weren't able to bump up against the Social Security Administration or the Secretary of State's office, then you have to show ID on election day because you didn't even really finish the registration process correctly. So we always let people, we try to help them along, but this person has to show you ID before voting, okay? So that's one reason, a person that had to show ID but couldn't. And the next one is, the voter tried to register to vote but didn't have 2 forms of ID. So at that registration table, when a person goes to register, they must show 2 pieces of ID. Both of them have to have their name, but one has to have the name and the current address. They weren't able to come up with that. So are we going to turn them away? No, they came this far. We'll let them register as much as they could, and then we'll allow them to vote a provisional ballot. And they'll have very specific amount of days to get that information into the election authority. The next one is, the records show that the person already voted. How can a person already vote? Here's how. They could have went to any one of those early voting locations that we have. We have numerous. We have 51 early voting locations. They went to one of them. Or they did it by mail. They had a vote by mail ballot and they mailed it back. But again, we could have made a mistake. So again, we'll give them the opportunity to vote provisional. And then the next one is the voter's voting status was challenged. So you guys heard a challenge that was made on the voter, and you guys, the majority of you as a precinct, agreed with that. And then that person can only vote a provisional, okay? And then the very last one is a court ordered the voting hours to continue past 7. So let's say you open your precinct an hour late, and then you get slapped with a court order that says your precinct must stay open till 8 or 8:30 or 9. Every person that comes in that precinct after 7 p.m. can only vote a provisional ballot. That's a lot of paperwork, isn't it? So that's why it's important that you get there on time and open that precinct on time so you don't suffer that consequence, okay? So that's the reasons why a person would vote a provisional. Again, their ballot does not go through the ballot scanner once they vote on the touchscreen. It gets stored in this envelope and they are given the pink receipt. Please don't ever give them the wet copy. We need the original. They only get the pink receipt, okay? That's how that works. So let's turn over to page 58 and 59. That shows you how to activate a card on the if a person wants to use the touchscreen, how to activate the card using the poll book. But we'll show you how to do a couple of those, but those are the written instruction if you need to read it on election day. And then that brings us over to page 62 and 63 and 64. And then we'll stop at page 65, or at 66. So all those pages are explaining voter registration. And most of the time on classes like this, we don't have the time to physically walk you through a registration, but I'm going to explain it to you. So there are very specific items that you need to have at your registration table. And here is your registration table. And here is where all the items will be placed, including this sign right here. Okay, so all the items you need for registration will be in your envelope number 5. And the different items that you're going to find is a precinct notification slip, just like at station number 1. In the event that the person is attempting to register and vote in this precinct, but they don't live in it, that's a slip that you'll give them, telling them where they should go once you find that information in the electronic poll book. Then you're going to have the types of identification. You're going to have a little form that tells you what ID is acceptable. And this form is also translated in those different languages. You're also going to have the registration forms, and they're translated as well. So the registration forms, the first rule about the registration table is this. Don't ever, ever have anybody fill out any paperwork or do anything until you look them up again. I don't even care if the person just came from the voter check-in table and you looked them up there. And once they get to that registration table, they're looked up again in the electronic poll book. Because you don't want people to fill out paperwork and say, oh, just kidding, you don't live in this precinct, we have to tell you to go somewhere else. Now they just filled out all this paperwork for nothing. Once you determine that they are in the right precinct, the voter will print all their information on this entire form. It's okay that the election coordinator signs this form. That is one form that they are allowed to fill out and to sign. So what happens is the voter will provide the information that's on top here, and this will serve as their application for ballot, just the same as every other application that every voter fills out. So this top portion, when it's completed, will make its way back to the spindle that sits at station number 2, and that will be spindled on that spindle. And if they want a paper ballot, that election judge at station number 2 will prepare their ballot. The bottom portion is all the information that's needed for a completed registration. And once that is filled out, the person that's working at the registration table will take all this data, all this information, and enter it into the electronic poll book. That's how a registration is taken. So what happens is, this is perforated. So this will be torn in half. This half stays on the spindle that will be brought to the election judge table. And this bottom portion, which is the registration, will be put inside this 48E envelope. And it'll stay there all day long until you're ready to get the things ready for the black roller bag. So those will come back. Here are the 3 reasons why a person would be registering and voting on election day, why they would have to register. Number 1, they're eligible, right? They're of legal age and they're a citizen and they've lived in the precinct for at least 30 days or more. They have never been registered before, so they're registering for the first time. Another reason a person would have to register on election day is they've moved. They've moved from from the Chicago maybe place of residency within Chicago. They moved. It's a change of address, so you'd be editing their information, or a change of name within the city of Chicago, right? So they may have changed their name and lived at one Chicago address, or just changed their name and they still live at the same address. So again, never registered, change of address, change of name. What happens is any voter who is registering for the very first time or changing their name, they will be given a brand new registration number. But if the person is simply just editing their address from one Chicago address to another, they will not get a new voter registration number. It'll stay the same as their previous registration, okay? So there you go. So we're stopping on page 66 because that is the election judge at station number 2, and we're just simply covering station by station. So we're only talking about station number 1. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start looking up voters' names, okay? Now if you fall behind, look to your neighbor, or you can look to their screen, because we're gonna kind of move quickly. And what I want you to do right now is I want you to look at your screens, and I want you to become comfortable with the screen. And looking at your screen, you're going to notice that we are finding people by name right now. And that's an automatic default. So anytime you tap the clear button, it's always going to automatically default to looking up a voter by name and also looking for them within the precinct name of voters. That's why we can use that 2-1 lookup method. Remember, you only need to put in the first 2 letters of a person's last name and only 1 letter of their first name. That's it. I want you to also look to the right side where it says Find by Name. If you're having difficulty finding somebody by name, you can also look them up by address. Sometimes it's a pain in the butt to look up people that have hyphenated names. They'll say, check Smith, no, Smith Davis, no, check Davis first and then Smith. So it gets confusing. So you can eliminate that headache by just looking them up by their address and looking at the address that they put on their application for ballot. Also, if you look to the right, you'll see in the blue letters it says Search in Precinct. That's also an automatic default. And that's why that 2-1 lookup method works beautifully, because it's only searching within those 1,200 registered voters of this precinct. If you ever have to tap the Search Entire City button, please do not use the 2-1 lookup method. Go back and finish putting in the voter's full last name and their full first name. because then you will, when you tap that button, it will go to a 1.4 million record search, because that's about how many registered voters we have within the city of Chicago. So that's going to take much longer and require more data, like the full last name, full first name. And if they have a very common name like Mary Jackson or Mary Smith, you better put in a zip code or something else, because it'll narrow it down even better. Okay, so I just wanted you to know how we're looking up people. So ladies and gentlemen, get your stylus or your finger ready, because we announced right now that our polls are open, and we had about 6 people storm through the door. Why? Because they want to vote right away, and they got to get on their way to work or school. So they're not playing, right? They filled out their application, they want to get their ballot, and they want to vote, and they want to get the heck out of there. All right, you ready for your first voter? The last name is Gates. So we're putting in G as in George, A as in Apple. We're only putting in G-A as the last name. I want you to tap right below that where it says first name, and I want you to put in a V for Virginia. And don't go any further. I want you to look at the top of your screen. And that, anything that you put in, any of those alphabet, are going to give you any of the possibilities within that precinct. When you find a voter that I say their name, you can't just look at them, because then that line will just keep piling up of voters, right? You have to tell the poll book which voter you're looking for. So when you see the name of the voter I say at the top of your screen, you can't just look at it, you got to tap their name. So either tap their name or address. So we're looking for Virginia Gates on West Pratt. When you find her, tap her name. I want you to look at page 47. Go back to your election handbook on page 47. And you have to know what information is required on the application for ballot. So everyone, please look at your screen. And remember, the voter filled out their application for ballot, so you're going to look in the top left corner to make sure that their name is correct and their address. You are then going to look toward the kind of the middle of the screen, and you're going to see their ballot style. Their ballot style is critical. That must be put on that circled area of the application for ballot. So look at that, right, on page 47. I want you to look to the right-hand side of where you see ballot style number, and you're going to see the year of birth. You're going to confirm and make sure that they gave you the same year, right? Because that proves that they are who they say they are. Right below that, it says VRN. That stands for voter registration number. Their voter registration number must be put on that application for ballot, so you're going to put that down as well. Now let's look to the right-hand side. You see where it says status, and it says in the box that they're active. This person is an active registered voter. I want you to look right below that. It says issued. That is pertaining to a ballot. That means at this election thus far, this person has not been issued a ballot. Not at early voting and not at vote by mail, and certainly not on election day, because here's where they are. They're in their home precinct attempting to vote, okay? So look at the bottom of your screen where you see comments. It will really narrow down what this voter is in, their precinct ward, their congressional, legislative, and judicial districts. Anything that is pertaining to the voter district-wise will be within that box. I want you to look right below that. If this is not the right voter, you would cancel, but this is the right voter that we're looking for. Look at the box to the right of that. It says issue provisional ballot. Why would we issue a provisional ballot? We have no reason to do that right now. So we are going to tap the obvious box, and we're going to tap the issue ballot button. You are then going to look back at the application that the person provided their info on, and you're going to look at the party that they chose. This person, Virginia, she wants to vote a Democratic ballot, so please tap Democratic. Now stay on that page. Let's look at the information that's on that page. Remember I talked about a federal office only voter? If the person was ever voting just the federal office only ballot, you see what you would have to check. Don't check it though, because that's not this person. But I want you to look below that. You see where it says audio ballot? If a voter needs to use the audio equipment on the touchscreen, you would tap that one, okay? Now you don't have to worry about that because this is not an audio voter, okay? But I want you to know what you would have to tap if they were. So now we're going to tap the Issue Ballot button one more time. And this is something you have to do for every voter. We're just taking our time talking about it, but you'll do it quickly. So now here is where you will see the voter's signature. Now what happens, ladies and gentlemen, is out here in our training classes, that's not the real voter's signature. This is real voters' data that we're using, but it's all scrambled to protect voters' privacy. We don't want you, while you're sitting here bored, looking up voters, right? Because it's not election day and you didn't take an oath of office and we don't trust you yet, right? So therefore, we just have real voter information, but it's scrambled. From here on out, I want you to pretend that this really is the voter's signature, okay? So this is the one you'd be comparing to what they signed on their application that's in front of your face. So you're either going to deny it if it's not their signature, or you're going to have to be very specific in the button you choose. So don't get tap happy. Really read your buttons before you tap them. Remember, I said that the majority of voters will be voting on paper ballots. And if I didn't say it, I'm saying it now. Here's why. You have 7 or 8 privacy voting booths that people can vote at the very same time. So that means you can knock out 7, 8 voters at a time. How many voters can you knock out on the touchscreen? 1. You only have 1 touchscreen. So that's why the majority of voters in your precinct will be issued paper ballots unless they indicate to you otherwise, right? So because that's going to be the majority, let's tap the middle button on the bottom that says Signature Accepted, Issue Paper. Now you just processed your first voter. Here's the second voter. Remember I told you there were 4 or 5 that came rushing in. The next voter, their last name is Honore. H as in Henry, O as in operator. You're just putting in H-O as the last name. Please tap where it says first name and put in a J for Gerald. We're looking for Gerald Honore. When you find Gerald, tap his name immediately. At the top of your screen, J. Gerald Honore with an H, H-O. But his name is with a J. He spells it with a J. All right, here's the next, Brown. Brown is easy enough, Brown. So B as in boy, R as in Robert. We're looking at Brown now. The first name is Patrick, so you're only putting in a P for Patrick. So once you find Patrick Brown, tap his name. And then please quietly read your screen. So you have a nice color indication to draw your attention. So ladies and gentlemen, I will talk ahead while you're reading. It is saying that this person is challenged and they're inactive. Now the reason they're inactive is because we received return mail from this individual. We don't want to disenfranchise these people, but we have reason to believe that they may not live there on account of the return mail that we received, okay? Not a big deal. So what it says on the screen is that you must make sure that the voter still lives at that address. So you're going to look back at their application and make sure the address they wrote down matches what you have at the top of the screen. And you're also going to ask them, are you still living there? If they say yes, you just let them vote. That's exactly what the screen tells you to do. But if they say, no, I didn't, I've moved, because you have a long line of voters, ask them, say, can you please just go to that registration table, and they will direct you to where you should be registering to vote at your new address, or if you moved within this precinct, we'll update your registration at that table. Okay? Just plain and simple. But this person said that. I have been having trouble with my mail, so I'm glad you asked me that, but yes, I still live there. So go ahead and tap the Issue Ballot button on the bottom right. Please tap Republican. Mr. Brown wants to vote a Republican ballot. And then again, don't forget, you'd still have to transpose and put all his information on his application. And go ahead and tap the Issue Ballot button. You would compare the signature at that point, but please tap the Signature Accepted, Issue Paper button. That's our second voter. Here's our third voter. The last name is Villa. So it's V as in victory. I as in igloo. His first name is Steven, so a first name, put an S for Steven. And he lives at 6818 North Wayne. When you find Steven, you got to tap his name immediately and then proceed to process him as a voter. So you are seeing right now that this screen, this color is indicating that this person must show identification. Well, that's weird because Patrick didn't have to show ID and neither did Virginia, right? But this person does. I'll tell you why. Remember I told you when you register to vote, you got to give those numbers, and they didn't give them. They didn't really complete the voter registration process, which is okay because right now it allows them to have, look at an ID. You're like a bouncer on election day, right? You have to look at an ID. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when you're looking at these pages, you notice that there's hyperlinks that we have on these pages. They're not in this poll book right now, but on election day, if you're confused and don't know what type of ID to look at, you can type that hyperlink and it'll take you right to the pages of the handbook that show you the types of ID. Now, all they have to do is show it to you and then they vote. But what happens if they don't have the identification? They can only vote a provisional ballot. But here's what I would tell them. Why don't you go home and get it, right? Yeah. Give them a realistic option. Go home and get it because this way you don't have to deal with the election authority after the fact and get them the ID. Because we still will not count that provisional unless they substantiate the identification. There you go. So let's pretend that this person has to vote a provisional ballot. So let's go ahead and say no ID provided, issue provisional. What you're going to do is you are going to get your provisional affidavit out. You're going to fill out the top portion, they're going to fill out the bottom portion. You are then going to get a provisional sleeve ready, and you're going to also have to activate a card. But it's not that simple. We are going to have to still data enter some information that is found on that affidavit that they filled out. So I want everybody, when you look at this right now, we're not really going to type in all their information. We're just going to type a little bit. But on election day, you have to type everything. But tonight, we're going to keep it simple, okay? So where it says last name, just put in a V for Villa. We're just putting in a V. Where it says first name, just put in an S for Stephen. I want you to tap where it says Social Security number, and then put in 1, 2, 3, 4. If you made a mistake, keep going so we can just at least get through this. But on election day, you will be perfect. Where it says date of birth, you have to put in 224. You see that? So put in for the date of birth 11/11/1985. Please tap the drop down for sex and put in male because Stephen is a male. Now once you have that data in there, you're going to tap the next button. And then you'll look back at their provisional affidavit and you will put in their address. So Stephen, we're going to keep it real simple. Where it says house number, just put in the number 6. Street direction, put in whatever street direction you like. For the street name, let's just put in a W for Wayne because he lives on Wayne Avenue. And for the city, just put in a C for Chicago. For the state, just put in I for Illinois. And for the zip code, please put in your very own zip code. Now, ladies and gentlemen, on their affidavit, if they put a telephone number or email on election day, you would certainly data enter that. But we're going to pretend that they gave everything. So go ahead and tap the Issue Ballot button, and that is where you are going to obtain that provisional ID number, okay? Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to go on to another screen because I want to save us some time. But you would then have to do a drop down and tell us why they're voting a provisional. You'll have all those reasons. But that's where you definitely get the provisional ID number, okay? So go ahead and tap the Cancel No Ballot Issued. We'll get out of there. And please tap the Cancel button on the bottom right and answer the question yes that you want to cancel. And then tap the Cancel on the bottom left. And then clear your screen completely after you answer the question about. There you go. Okay, so there you go. We're going to look up another voter. This one is going to be by address so that you can practice that. So please tap the Find by Address. Are you guys ready? Where it says house number, I want you to tap in 1336. So we're looking for 1336. Once you've got that in there correctly, right to the right of it, you have to do the drop down for the street direction. It's a W, as in west. You're then at the street name. The street name is Columbia, so you're putting in COL. You're going to find it at the top of your screen already. Her name is Christina Smith. Tap Christina Smith's name, and please tap the Issue Ballot button on the bottom right. Please tap Democratic. Christina wants a Democratic ballot. And please tap the Issue Ballot button. You're going to compare the signature, but she wants to vote on the touchscreen. So you're going to tap the Signature Accepted Issue Card button. What you're going to do now is you're going to take the voter card that you find on the right-hand side of your, right here on the right-hand side of your poll book, and you're going to insert it into the reader slot that's on the right-hand side of your poll book. You're going to see yellow tape right there. So slide it around and then slide it all the way in. Now what you're going to do is you're going to look on the bottom left-hand side of your screen, and it's going to say Writing to Card. So you want to wait until the card is written. So what it's doing is it's activating that chip on the card for the voter. So when it's finished, it's going to tell you to remove the card, and then you'll hand it to the voter along with the privacy screen, and they will go over to the touchscreen voting unit and they'll vote. So you hold on to that card that's activated, okay, because you're going to take it to your station. We're going to look up one more voter. Okay, so now ladies and gentlemen, she just got a pop-up. So what's going to happen every hour on the hour, you're going to get a pop-up that says how many people are waiting in line to vote. Please answer the question honestly when you see that pop-up. Right now, if you see the pop-up, just let's say 2. Yes. But answer it honestly. Don't put fictitious numbers, because these numbers go to the federal government to make sure that we're processing voters accordingly and long lines are not appearing in the polling places. So here's our next voter. The last name is Lake. L as in Laura, A as in Apple. The first name is Mary with an M. I want you to look at the top of your screen. Do you see anybody with the name Mary Lake? No. Okay. So that's okay. We're not gonna like freak out about it. We're gonna go back to where her last name is, and we're gonna finish spelling Lake. So we're gonna put in L-A-K-E. Once we finish putting in her last name Lake, we're gonna tap where it says first name and finish spelling Mary. And Mary is spelled M-A-R-Y. Once you have that information in there correctly, you're gonna go to the middle of your screen, and you're going to tap the button that says Search Entire City, and that's right below the precinct. When you find the voter at the top of your screen, please tap her name. Now you're going to read the screen, and that screen tells you that this voter is a registered voter, but they're in the wrong precinct. And what is our job on Election Day? To always get a voter to go to the right precinct. So you are going to look at your screen, just like the instructions say, and you're going to tap the Precinct Details tab. And then it will give you their precinct and ward, and you will take your precinct notification slip and you'll write down their information, or you can also text it to them. So I just want you to know what the options are. But right now, tap the cancel button and then say yes on the warning and clear your screen. So I wanted you to know how you're going to redirect a voter. So we are going to we're going to quickly go over some other, the other stations. We're going to put some ballots through. So I want you guys to please look on page 66. On page 66, on the left-hand side, it tells you all the items that must be at your station. So you're going to have all your ballot markers and Sharpies. You're going to have a large ballot viewer if people need to use it to magnify the print on their ballot. And you're going to have orange demonstration ballots. Please always make sure that these orange demonstration ballots stay at your table at all times. So anyway, you're going to have a whole bunch of Sharpie markers, and you will make sure that the Sharpie markers also come back after the voters are finished voting. But you want to offer every person a demonstration, because we have been voting the same way for the past 15 years, right? Where a person connects the line. Now what they're doing is they're actually coloring in the oval next to the candidate's name that they want to vote for. So you've got to offer that demonstration to everybody. Don't give them, give them the benefit of the doubt that they never voted before. You're going to have all your official ballots in front of you with every ballot style and every party. Don't just put out the ones you feel like putting out. All your ballots must be out on the table. Your privacy sleeves that they'll hide their vote in, and also the spindle. Remember, they spindle their applications. and envelope P, the provisional carrier envelope, and envelope S, in the event that a person spoils a ballot and receives a brand new one. So those are all the things that you're going to have at your station so you can do a good job. And again, please offer every voter a demonstration. Before you issue the ballot to anyone, you've got to put your initials on the correct ballot along with the precinct and ward. And here's how you give them the correct ballot. You look at the party, you'll see that in the color-coded area right here, and here is where their ballot style is, the number. You will find all this information on the application for ballot that is spindled on this sheet. That's what happens, okay? Always direct the voter to a voting booth, give them the demonstration, and always instruct them where to put their ballot when they're finished, okay? Don't just let them go off into Never Never Land. Then we're going to go on to the next station on the next page, which is page 68. That's the judge's station number 3. And it tells you that they have to have ballot markers, a Sharpie, and they also have the I voted wristbands that they're going to offer voters once they return their ballot. So we're going to put some ballots through the ballot scanner so that you can see the error messages or know how a ballot is inserted into the scanner. It can be inserted any way. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put it upside down. And they can be, and the voter's putting this in, not you. And you always remind the voter, please read the screen, please read the screen. It says casting ballot. Now it says ballot successfully cast. So now at that point, I would collect the Sharpie marker and the privacy cover I gave them, and I would wish them well and say, we hope to see you in November for the November election, okay? So the next scenario, I'll put this in backward, right? Not upside down, but backward. And the voter inserts it, and you remind the voter, please look at the screen to make sure your ballot was cast. And it says, quick review, there's an overvote that happened. It said the Director of Commerce, you voted for too many people within that particular race. And again, this is just a practice ballot. So both of these lights are illuminated, the cast ballot button and the return. That means the voter has those two choices. That's why those two lights are lit up. So the voter needs to figure out, with that overvote, do I want to just put this through or do I want to re-vote? So the voter would tap return and their ballot will be ejected out of the scanner. It was sitting there in limbo. They'll put it back in their privacy cover, but they'll come over to the judge that gave it to them, and that election judge will mark spoiled on both sides of this, fold it up, and put it into the spoiled ballot envelope. They must remember to go back to the spindle and check off that they spoiled a ballot and received another. They have to tell us why they gave away more ballots than they had voters. But now a voter can also cast this ballot. It's their prerogative, okay? So a voter can say, you know what, I don't really have time and I don't have that much love for that office, so go ahead, I'm gonna cast it. So here's another scenario that I hope doesn't happen. Again, remind your voter, because you're not standing on top of them, you're standing about 5 feet away. And say, please read the screen, and it says that it's a quick review, it's a blank ballot. What do you mean it's blank, right? So if they return it, you can't really look at it and help them analyze it because you'd be infringing on their privacy. But you may not have given them a demonstration, and maybe this voter didn't follow instructions and they circled the candidate's name, right? So, but a blank ballot, believe it or not, that can be cast as well. It'll show that the voter showed up, but they just, came in and voted a blank ballot. Now here's something that, again, I hope doesn't happen. So remember, it always leaves it in limbo until we get their answer. So another scenario is, voter puts in their ballot, and this one's spitting it right back out. It's saying, get the heck out of here. So why would it do that? I'll tell you why, because there's no initials on here. Illinois election law demands that every ballot be initialed by a judge. So now also, this ballot scanner is very sensitive. It reads things very well. So you may have an ambiguous mark, which is just a dot, but it says, wait, did you mean to vote for that candidate or not? So you may even get other little messages like that it's ambiguous, like we can't read it. We don't really know what this voter means. So let's pretend that we are voting on the touchscreen, okay? So when a person votes on the touchscreen, they'll be voting on it just because they want to, or because they need to use the audio capability, or they need the sip and puff. If a person needs the audio capability, you have to stand with them at the machine until they put on their headphones and you tap their language and what are they using? Are they using the headphones or the sip and puff? So again, for an audio, you do have to stay with the voter until that point, okay? But this is not an audio voter. This is just a voter who's voting using the screen. They insert their card into the reader slot, and the first thing they are asked for is to choose their language, okay? Once they do that, the voter, it's by themselves, they're voting for whoever they want. Abe Lincoln. Now I changed my mind. I don't want Abe Lincoln, I want Adlai Stevenson. But it won't allow me to tap Adlai. It won't allow for an overvote. So I have to remove the vote from Abe, and then I give it to Adlai, okay? So the voter will vote for all the candidates that they want. You know, they can vote a full ballot, they can vote half a ballot, or they can vote one race and leave. You know, it's up to them what they do. So right now, they will get to a review page where it'll allow them to review all their choices. But they will get a warning if they skipped races, either intentionally or unintentionally. Either way, it's letting them know. So I'm going to say print ballot. I intentionally did that. But now they get one final warning that says, some warnings detected on your ballot. You cannot make any more changes after printing this ballot. So that means that scanner that they put it in, it's not going to reject their ballot for anything because they had 2 opportunities to make changes, correct? The only thing it will reject it from is if it's not initialed. So I'm going to go ahead and say print my ballot. So the voter will wait patiently for their ballot to be printed. Now remember, I do have that privacy cover. The voter will put their ballot into this privacy cover. Now right here, it's only printing up their choices. So when they put this in here, it allows the election judge who's working the ballot box to have enough space to initial it, okay? It also reminds the voter that they have to remove their card, and they will bring that back to the election judge over there as well. So again, this will have to be initialed by the election judge who's at the ballot scanner, and this ballot, like the others, can be inserted into the scanner in any direction. Doesn't have to be face up, it could be backward or, you know, upside down. So it's saying ballot read successfully, and that person will give their card back and their privacy cover, and they will be on their way. They'll get their little wristband. So that's how people vote on the ballot scanner and the touchscreen. What I want you guys to do is the card that you guys have activated, you're going to bring it to your station. Please don't lollygag there, okay? Because it's not really election day, you're not really voting. But I want one person to vote like on the touchscreen and have your other person watch you. And then you can put through the test deck of the different possibilities of paper ballots and errors and make sure to read the screen. When you're finished with that at your station, come back and we'll close our polls.